welcome to Quantum Messages. Thanks so much for joining the show.
It's a privilege to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
I'm so excited to talk to you today. Lowell and I were just talking off recording that I literally just he fell into my consciousness. Like I didn't even know who he was, and then all of a sudden he popped up on my YouTube feed. Uh, and it came up. It must have something to do with the connection to Mount Shasta because Lowell has a very big story about Mount Shasta and also other interdimensional light beings as well. And there's just some type of energetic connection that came up. And I was so fascinated by Lowell's story about the Telos and the Lemurians that I just had to contact him. I was just, my guides told me to contact him. And so I did. And then we're in this interview right now. So it's really exciting. So Lowell, just tell us in general, what's going on right now? Tell us your story. So much is happening. This might take a long time.
It would take a long time. In fact, when I've tried to, kind of compartmentalize what's happened since, I think what triggered all of this for me is I had a TIA, I had a little mini stroke at the very end of 2015. So I had surgery to correct it the first week in December. And during that 30-day period of time when my surgeon suggested, you're just going to be recovering for a while. And one of the things he suggested I might want to explore from a therapy perspective might be meditation. Well, I'd always been interested in learning how to get to that quiet spot everybody else was telling us that they could achieve, and I just couldn't find it. To make a long story short, in a couple months' time, I would find TM, Transcendental Meditation, through watching The Secret for the third time. And that would progress to once I got my meditative state kind of locked and loaded, it did a lot of things. I can point to lots of health benefits I got from it, weight loss. Um, I had a history of high blood pressure that disappeared. I was an athlete most of my life, liked to play hockey, and so my joints were always kind of arthritically, just achy, gone. I have no other the way to explain what had happened and how, other than achieving a meditative kind of state of being. Um, Once that was in place, I was drawn to Shasta. It wasn't my intent. It was right after COVID had happened and the lockdown had relaxed. Now, there were a lot of complications I was going to have to moving around because when all this happened, I had just finished, although my home was Santa Rosa, California,
Oh
I
my
had
gosh.
been,
I was in Healdsburg. Weird.
yes,
Of
no,
course,
not
right?
weird. There are no coincidences. And
No.
we can backtrack and talk about those connections. But anyway, I had finished a consulting gig in Baton Rouge and actually thought I was going to be relocating to Vegas. All of them, everything had been put into place for that to happen. And the week before I was supposed to close, which was mid-February, remember, COVID hit at the end of the month. I had a brief period of time in between, so I thought I was going to go visit my son for a week because he still lives in Santa Rosa. And then I would go close on the house the week after. Well, on the drive between Louisiana and California, my guides kept telling me, don't close on the house. Don't close on the house. And I didn't know why. I had not a lot of earnest money, but I had escrow money that I knew I would be at risk. But something just kept nagging at me. So I made the call that was painful to make and called my realtor and said, I got to back out. And 3 days later, COVID hit. So now I'm stuck at my son's house. And I say stuck because he didn't expect me. He's already got three other roommates, didn't need somebody else who was going to now occupy the couch for months. Anyway, by the time we got to June and conditions are beginning to relax, I just need to get out. Wasn't that I didn't appreciate the kindness of my son and his roommates to just kind of tolerate what was going on. under conditions nobody had any control over. I just need to get out. And so my first thoughts were to head to peaceful, quiet places out in nature. And the four corners of, the Southwest, uh, there's lots of national parks there. Some I'd been to before and I would go back to in a heartbeat. And I thought that was the direction I was going to head. And when I began to make plans to do that, you could see these signs on social media that some of these places might not even be open. And the very next thought in my head was Mount Shasta. Now, from where I lived, it was 4 hours. So I could get there in the morning or an afternoon. It was pretty easy. But although I'd driven by it, I knew just enough about it to knew that there was some kind of energetic properties that it had, but it wasn't as much as I like to be outside. The opportunity had never presented itself for me to go visit Shasta. Well, to call it an opportunity that presented itself to go there would be erroneous now. I was called there, and I'm not the only one. In the same way, Ani, that before this began, you explained how you were drawn to the area, took your family there.
Yeah.
Lots of that activity has been taking place.
Yeah.
People have been drawn to energetic places for reasons they don't understand yet.
Yet.
There's a whole phenomenon going on with this energetic shift taking place on the planet that is interpreting itself into places on the planet first and then individuals, sentient beings. So the reason you were drawn to Shasta is it provokes that kind of energy. It's not the only place on the planet that does that. And I've grown to understand them to be called golden tie allotments. There are them in Shasta, Sedona, Hawaii, Egypt, Greenland, Glastonbury. There are these spots all over the planet that people have been drawn to and they didn't really understand. They were drawn there to help adapt this new energy to the area. So it's already predisposed to the new vibrations that we are about to step into. Once the areas reach that level, then you've left this imprint, this aura behind that I dare people to walk through and not be affected by. Now it will affect others. And now you can see how the chain works. They were affected by it. They go back to their circle. Their people want to know what the hell that light is that's inside of you. And the progression goes on. But I've seen this now in the last 4 years accelerate to rates that is just remarkable to me. And Telos will finally be put into perspective as a multidimensional experience because I'm going to have another one the following year up in the Shasta area again with a hybrid who crossed my path that I didn't know anything about. And she is going to put me in a situation where I'm going to have encounters with light beings and she's going to photograph it. So when it was all done and she handed it to me, I'm clueless, Ani, about what any of this means. I didn't grow up in this world where it wasn't that I wasn't curious about intelligences greater than mine. I always was. But to chase it, this spiritual community I found myself in, that wasn't my focus. Um, a few months into this last gig in Baton Rouge, that was when the nagging began. Went back there. Let's see, I got my TM training in 2016. 2018, I'm back in Baton Rouge, and I'm going to be there for a couple years. Halfway through 2018, I'm getting this nagging feeling like you're supposed to be doing something else.
Mm-hmm.
And these profound thoughts are coming to me that I just have to write down because I don't know where this is coming from. But it's not me. But this thought is so profound, I need to write it down. After months, I had a journal of hundreds of these things that I'd written down and began to understand that my DNA was beginning to crack open. And this wasn't new information being presented to me because who was telling it to me? What books was I reading it out of? What YouTube videos? There wasn't any of that. All of a sudden, things were coming into my awareness that I didn't take responsibility for the information, But I know now it's just information that I've carried throughout incarnations, and
So
it's
it's
being
part of your,
unlocked. I'm not the only one, am I?
is it your soul that is giving you this information, or is it or is it your like guardians,
Yeah,
your
I cracked into my Akashic records,
uh-huh.
into those strands of my DNA that were inactive for a long time. Yeah, they've been activated. Whether all 12 strands, I don't think. If I was to think that they were all activated, I'd be floating, I'd be defying gravity, I'd be doing lots of things that, oh, we have the ability to do. We're just not quite there yet. But bilocation, out
Yeah,
of body experiences, that's
teleporting,
going to
quantum
be more.
teleporting.
Yes, they're
That's
like,
basically what you're doing, quantum teleporting.
that's exactly right, Andy. It's good for people to put real terms to that because our little humanness needs to understand things in 3D physical terms,
Yeah.
or we just can't embrace it. I'll tell you the reason why I got as far as I did is I put all of the things that I thought were impossible out of my field
Mhm.
and started to tell myself, well, what if this was true? What if this situation is real? And then the doors just kept flooding open.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Synchronicities.
Yes.
Amazing. Yeah, it's amazing. So when you went to what was it that was drawing you to Mount Shasta? Like,
I
was it
just,
just an internal, like, was it in your heart center? Like you just needed to go? Because that's how
yeah,
I feel. Like I just
yes.
needed to go.
In
There was
in a
no question.
sentence, that was it.
Yeah.
I like to be outdoors. And
Mhm.
so the appeal for me to be out on a mountain that I hadn't been to before that had some other energetic properties to it, love to explore it, and I had plenty of time. The the model was that none of us in the house were working. I wasn't, my son wasn't, so I thought I was going to go to Shasta for a week,
Mhm.
explore it, see what I liked, and then maybe the second week I would hook up with my son either in Tahoe or Reno or like no one's working, so let's just get out. Well, by the end of the first week, I just there were areas that I hadn't explored yet that I'd heard about. And every day I went out, I was hiking like I was 17 years old. I didn't pay attention to changes in elevation. And yet I didn't, well, let me not get ahead of myself so I can
Mhm.
put this into perspective and hope people understand how palpable the energy is there.
Mhm.
By the
Yep.
end of the first week, I reached out to my son. I said, There's just something here I want to continue to explore in places I haven't been yet." He said, "Stay as long as you like." And so I decided I'd stay at least another week. Well, when I got close to the end of the second week, it was Friday of the second week. And I'd noticed this other couple about my age that I'd seen hiking, throughout the week. I could tell on this particular day, they were at this place we all like to go to. It's as high as you can drive. You know where it is, up an old ski bowl trail, that trailhead. It's as high as you can drive on the mountain with your car.
Mhm.
And they were kind of saying their goodbyes. And I could overhear them talking about the energy that they were, and that it kind of got my attention because there was something I was feeling too. And it wasn't until that moment I connected all the dots and went, holy cow, there's some kind of energy here that I tapped into because I was going out hiking every day, not thinking about what the physical um, requirements it
Implication.
would be for me to go through changes of elevation every day without a day of rest in between. 2 weeks, I'd done that. And until they mentioned it, I went, holy cow, this energy is palpable.
Mhm.
And each time I went back, I could feel energy differently. The first time I went and spent time in the forest, I wasn't thinking I was going to Telos, didn't even knew it existed until I was there. I found out about Telos in a shop window because it was on the cover of a book. I
Yeah.
knew this much about Lemurians
Mhm.
because I was curious about Atlanteans
Mhm.
in past life regressions. And you can't really learn about them until you hear about the Lemurians. Well, it was all going to come together while I was there in Shasta and remind me of relationships I'd had, past lives I'd had once I got to Shasta. But I was clueless about any of it. What I seemed to be drawn to were energetic areas. That's what I seemed to be sensing while I was out in the forest. But I wasn't following the trails everybody else follows. I like to go off trail and find what I can find. And when I did, that's when I found these spaces. Each year I would go back and return. It seemed as though these energetic places easier to find,
Mm-hmm.
and there were more of them. I conclude that because of the shifting of the energy here, that it's more important for us to understand the energetic grid and how to plug into it now.
Mm-hmm.
Those things are coming back to an alignment, and that's why people are being drawn to it. We're just a little electromagnetic devices and capacitors as well. And when we start to see ourselves that way, it's easier us to figure out how I connect to Earth and
Mm-hmm.
everything else beyond it. Because if I begin to tell you about connections to inner Earth beings and then beyond Earth sentience, some of us that have had those experiences are here to advise the rest of you that think you've had them. They don't second guess them anymore. This stuff, this contact is beginning to rise. It's no secret anymore. There's tons of evidence. I got so tired of recording that kind of crap in the sky that I gave my equipment to somebody else. I got enough evidence to satisfy myself. And I was getting tired of trying to explain it to others. I understand that people have to get there throughout their own journeys, and however it takes for them to understand it on their terms. I'm here to tell you, and apparently I was placed to do this very thing, that this stuff is real.
Mm-hmm.
That
Yeah.
multidimensionality is a concept that you should embrace as quickly as possible, because we're starting to experience things in higher realms now. And
Mm-hmm.
why? Because those realms are just about to lock and load, and that's the only vibration that we're capable of holding.
Yeah.
I'll take a breath now.
It's very it's very exciting. It's very, I just, what I hear you talking, I've been saying this all along, that we are multidimensional beings. We travel multidimensionally all the time. And part of our, we naturally travel like in the in-between state, the hypnagogic state, the deep meditative state, when our brain waves are syncing in with our, heart center, and then that sinks in with the earth. And so when we get into those deep, theta brainwave states, or even gamma, we're able to boom, tap in and quantum teleport. And I call it just going quantum. And so it sounds like that is what you are that is what, well, I don't know, the mountain allowed you to be able to do that somehow, because it shifted your energies uh,
Yes.
by walking around on it. So you deeply
Yes.
connected to it. And so it tuned you like a tuning fork. Um, it's just
It's
really,
funny you say that, because
yeah,
it took me months to really understand what happened.
yeah,
And when I came out that day, I went to some trusted sources locally that I needed to share this with, because I wanted someone to help explain what the hell just happened. I
yeah.
wasn't, it wasn't a story I think I needed to tell. And
Mm-hmm.
it would be months later that it would occur to me that, no, I wasn't ready to tell that story, because I didn't assimilate it enough to understand what had happened, until I had the second
Mm-hmm.
multidimensional experience the following year. Things would finally start to get placed into perspective. And then you understood what this multidimensional realm and access to it was. It wasn't going to be the same trip I had to Telos. Oh, no. There are many other things that they're trying to prepare us for, and that's just one realm.
Yeah.
When I returned, one of the first things they reminded me was, we want you to be aware of Telos, but don't get too locked and loaded with it. You know that there are other inner Earth cities. And
Mm-hmm.
the reason that it's important for people to realize that that had all taken place before is because Earth is going through a shift that is going to involve a pole shift.
Yeah.
Whether land masses change or not, it's quite likely that they will. No one can predict what's really going to happen when that energy finally changes Earth. And it's not like this is a new idea, it's happened many times before. it's happening on our watch now.
Mhm.
But I have to believe that we chose this period to be here. Now, as fearful as that may sound, because we're not done with catastrophic things going on the planet. Oh no, we're just beginning. Here's where understanding the dimensionality and the densities of where we exist right now, where we're going, because at the same time, I think you kind of touched on, our bodies are adapting to something else. We are changing from this carbon form that lasts what, 80 to 100 years, into crystalline forms. That light form that we were before, our bodies are adapting to that now. So this day when new Earth evolves, we're already adapted to it. And it's
Mm,
a different physicality than what we think of now.
mhm.
When I'm sure most people think of Telos, it's this hard space underground. It's this cave space. Well, it's
No.
a dimensional realm. It happens to reside where we think is beneath the surface, but until you can really comprehend layers of density
Mhm.
and dimensions, you'll never really comprehend where this is. And when I throw on top of it that fourth and fifth dimension are still physical realms, it gets even more confusing, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think all the way, yeah, I think once you start getting to sixth density, that's when you start becoming more light, but definitely fourth
You
and
are light.
fifth densities.
Yes, you are.
Yeah.
It's quite possible for you to take form, but you no longer. You're
Right.
light.
Right. It's just a
Yes.
completely shifting of perception. And yeah, it's just shifting our perception to, start like we are living in a third density space right now. And that's what we're experiencing. However, Earth is, shifting, as you said, ascending into fourth density, and the type of beings that will be living on that fourth density planet are much different than the beings living on this planet. And so, those of us who will be experiencing that, yes, we are here to shift our DNA and also acclimate ourselves with different frequencies. So
Yes, here's where the vibration matching
yeah,
all takes place. So when your tribe hears what this is about adapting
yeah,
your vibration and
yeah,
getting this right. When I
yeah,
say, and my guides remind me to remind all the rest of you to pay attention, tend to your own flame right now. That's
yeah,
not a selfish proposition right now.
yeah,
Get this right, because the time that we need to sort out our karma, we can't really lift until we've achieved balance.
hmm,
Dissolving, cutting those karmic cords, you got to figure out a way to deal with that. There's a reason why all these things are coming to the surface now, aren't they, Ani?
yeah,
Because they need to be healed and cleared in order for you to evolve to the next level.
mhm,
This is about vibration matching. The
yeah,
next place we're going has a higher vibration. And it's our challenge as sentient beings to reach that level of achievement so we can experience that place.
yeah, yeah. I know it's so fascinating to me. I just, yeah, just like the connection, like all these synchronistic moments, they're just kind of, I feel like time is moving faster and, people cannot be quiet anymore. Like, you're telling your story. I have this podcast. I just cannot be quiet anymore. I have to talk and I have to share. And the more people that we help wake up, the better it will be for everyone as we're shifting into these new realities. So,
True.
yeah.
I believe that people like you and I, you know, I don't care about fame. I don't. I've had plenty of
Yeah.
recognition during my career, and toward the end of it, I was really more of a champion to see my staff get recognition. I
Mhm,
had mine. I love to see when their faces light up. That
mhm,
was my juice. And now it's no different. I
yeah,
just have a different task right now.
yeah,
My task is to help people understand the experiences I've had. Not that you're going to repeat them, but you are lined up and the conditions are right for you to have extraordinary, magical experiences right now. You have the same humanness that I have. It's your level of awareness that
mhm,
is the only thing that needs to broaden out. So begin to look at circumstances that might seem a little fairy tale-ish to you, because some of this new realm is designed exactly like that. But
mhm,
if you're asking to receive and experience miracles, don't dismiss them when they show up.
mhm. Yeah. Yeah, no, yeah. Be careful what you ask for, so to speak.
Hmm.
Because yeah, the veils are definitely thinning. The timelines, like there's all timelines merging right now, is what I'm seeing, and so we're going to be hitting this singularity point, and then the timelines will be, will be shifting into different timelines. So,
Yeah, I
uh,
think we're there, Annie. I
yeah,
think it was actually last week, the day after the inauguration. And I'm not speaking politically at all. I'm speaking energetically. But once some of those orders came out, you could see now the sense of separation and duality. And this time that you were talking about, these timelines that had been coinciding, I see here's where the actual separation actually began.
mm-hmm,
Here is the travel onto the third dimension and
yep,
its eventual entropy, and
yep,
all those people that wanted, finish out their 3D lessons. But the rest of us that are aware, oh, we're on our way to higher, realms and new Earth, because this energetic shift on the planet is taking place.
yeah,
We're sentient critters hanging on for dear life while she is, and hoping at the end our vibration matches hers.
yep,
I'm confident that people that I'm having these conversations with, and you, and clearly the people that have been listening to your podcast for a while, vibrate at this level and understand that although in my 3D head, I might not understand it all, but there's something real about what is going on here. And we were chosen like that. We didn't need to be popular people with faces like that. We were genuine people. I'm convinced that I was chosen to follow this path through the hospitality business. And I lived in 9 states during the process of all this. So imagine how many lives I've interacted with.
mm-hmm,
And I'm sure that the hope is that I left a positive impression on all these people so that the day that comes when I'm going to talk about things that they've only speculated about and call them as true, that maybe there's a little more volition in this whole disclosure process when you hear it from people like Ani and Lowell.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, yeah, totally. I totally agree. Yeah, just yeah. I always feel like I have one foot in this third density realm and then one foot in the unseen realms. Like I'm
straddling
walking.
dimensions.
I'm like
I love
walking on
it.
a tightrope. I'm like, okay, like here's
Yes.
one and here's another, and I'm sure you feel that same way too. I was wondering if we could go back to Mount Shasta. I mean, you've been on multiple podcasts, and so you've told your story multiple times. But why did the Lemurians choose Mount Shasta as their place to reside in another dimension?
If you understand land masses before Lemuria sunk, that part of Western North America was very much part of Lemuria. And when the other parts sank, this was a higher elevation level. Now, when I say that, and I want to kind of put this into perspective, Telos back then wasn't just the city underneath Mount Shasta that they claimed when they needed somewhere to go with the flood that was impending. It was whole territory, and it covered much more of Western North America. If you've been in the Sedona area, you'll sense those same Lemurian energies because they're already there. They've been there for a long time. That's part of that landmass. Um, I know I had a thought to complete, so prod me back, bring
Yeah.
me back to wherever we were going.
I just wanted to know why the Lemurians chose that specific area.
Because of it's they were looking for an inner earth place, and they had to get permission to be able to do that.
From who?
The Galactic Federation that
Okay.
oversees the
Mhm.
planet,
Yeah.
and especially Agartha, inner earth, that realm, they
Okay.
had to be given permission to occupy space there, just like the other inner earth realms that are
Mhm.
already there.
Yep.
um, they didn't want to leave the planet. They were here for the same purposes, but they needed to protect themselves once we went through the fall
Yeah.
and density dropped that low. They did that to protect their energy and
Mhm.
not let it be affected by the drop in energy that happened on the surface, and watch that disintegrate. their
Mm-hmm.
community. They were going to protect it. They've only been waiting for humanity to match their vibration before they reintegrated on the surface and brought all the things that they have been archiving ever since back to the surface. But in return, those of us that wish, because now we've realized our dimensional ability to, supersede this one, if we wish to go to Telos in those lower levels, you're welcome. And you certainly have the capacity to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But again, let me remind you, Telos is one of 120 cities in inner Earth that have been suggested are in existence. 10 of them that I've read about and are familiar with through books and things and resources I've read. So I believe that there's a reason why we're being presented with this information again. Look at the catastrophic stuff that's going on, and where would we head in the event of the next one? Well, underground facilities work out really well, and I'm talking about things that they weren't like Cheyenne Mountain, where the government carved out this underground space. These are dimensional spaces that are
Mm-hmm.
already occupied and waiting. More of these are other Lemurian colonies on other places on the planet. Let's not forget, there are still Atlantean colonies on other places on the planet. And I'm not suggesting just because the Atlanteans things
Mm-hmm.
went sour on their last watch, it doesn't mean that that was the entirety of their community. They're
Mm-hmm.
loving beings, and they also have some technologies to
Right.
share with humanity once we get our act back together, and they're just waiting. Aside from those two cultures, there are other inner Earth cultures that we are unfamiliar with, that are benevolent and here for the benefit of the planet,
Mm-hmm.
and here doing their evolution just like the rest of us. But I
Mm-hmm.
can promise you, our first contacts with them, because our human reflexes, one of fear, is going to be a little unsettling, at least for us to get through the first time.
Mm-hmm. So
If I could wish anything, it would be that we could erase that emotion.
yeah, interesting. So so the Lemurians, if we were to contact them, that would be okay, but these other ones that we don't really know about are physically not like humans. Is that what
They're
you're
not ready yet. Well, there are others that are humanoid, absolutely, positively. But I'm
saying?
here to tell you that there are those that are not.
Mm-hmm.
Just as benevolent, just as here dedicated to the planet, but they're going to be in life forms that we are not familiar with.
Yeah, interesting. So I'm really curious because there's a huge push right now for transhumanism and AI. Massive,
Yes,
massive push. So
yes.
what do they think about that?
It's a ridiculous idea.
Yeah.
There's no candy coating it. It's a ridiculous idea.
Mm-hmm.
We have let AI it's the next marketing push by the tech companies. My goodness, AI is a depository. It can only refer to the information that it's already accumulated. And look, kids, we've all accumulated, we've contributed to this over time. Every time you put something digital out into the world, it has been captured. And so AI is a depository of that. When you go to reference it, that's the depository it has to pull information from. It has no sentience, so it can't think through that process. It We've made more of it than it is. And here's my perspective, because I've had some really close friends that one was a brilliant software engineer and rose to, like um, C-level
Mm-hmm.
uh, positions.
Mm-hmm.
And even he was talking about how he was going to implement AI in his presentations. I'm thinking, when do I get back to your original thoughts? Because
Mm-hmm.
it's you I want to hear, not some composite of somebody else's thoughts. Where do we go back and hear the original humans
Mm-hmm.
instead of this AI composite that we think that we're compelled to put out because it's so cool? Where did our original thoughts go? Where does the authentic person get represented in all that? We're leaning on technology in a way that, to me, just speaks to the last time Atlantis got us
Yep.
to the same
Yep.
place.
I was just going to say that. I was like, do you think that this is a repeat? Because Atlantis was not able to fulfill whatever they were not able to complete their cycle because of the destruction
Correct.
that happened. So that is now brought back to this time so that this cycle can be complete, this karmic cycle can be completed. So it's literally coming back. What do you, I mean, you just kind of mentioned it, but what do you think about that?
Here's my parallel, Zani. Um, the Atlanteans had their own perspective on what they thought their role was. And when this conflict with the Lemurians came along, it had to do with Lemurians from a metaphysical standpoint, thought that everybody was on their own spiritual path and should be allowed to explore that. Where the Atlanteans were a little more structured and they thought that those people should come under somebody else's sway. And here's where the conflict began. So during that period of time, they had figured out a way, whether it was crystal based or whatever it was, they had really harnessed atomic power. And when they decided to weaponize it, that's when things went sour. And the eventual war that was caused by it was the result of, Lemuria and Atlantis, those colonies sinking away. So let's bring you into the current situation. Here's how I see what's taking place and why more benevolent off-planet assistance is coming our way. Because for a long time, it was my understanding that any kind of extraterrestrial or ultra-terrestrial assistance here to humans was hands-off. We were meant to evolve on our own. However, when we understood atomic energy and started to develop it in the 30s. And then in the 40s, turned it into a weapon and dropped it on a place of the planet. We just demonstrated what our little carbon bodies here for 100 to 80 to 100 years were capable of doing to a cosmic asset. We were willing to drop bombs on it and didn't know what we were doing. That is the point at which I think that everything changed and this cosmic assistance now was not so hands off anymore. And the first waves that Dolores Cannon talks about
Yeah,
that started to incarnate in the early 50s,
yeah.
man, I see myself as part of that effort.
Me too.
Yes, if
I
we
think that's
knew
one
that we were going to affect
yeah,
change, we had to do it from a physical perspective. So we had to incarnate here and then somehow hope we woke up by the time it was going to be necessary.
we took a huge risk by coming in though.
No doubt.
The process.
No
It was,
doubt.
it's a big risk. And I'm seeing the younger, like my children, I'm wondering if, she talked about 3 waves, and I don't know when the third wave, third volunteer group came. I can't remember when they started incarnating. Do you know the date?
I don't.
Yeah.
I see it more generationally. Like the
Okay.
first waivers were those of us that were kind of in the early 30s, maybe even late 40s, because by then, intergalactic help was there. And
Yeah.
this overlaps with interactions that
Mhm.
UAPs and real beings from other planets had with our government.
Yep.
Yeah, I
Yep.
can,
Yep.
there's more information that's about to come out on what
Yeah.
the government really knew. So there's a whole nother level of disclosure that is about to take place. And
Yeah.
parts of this, I feel like I'm being pressed into service because I'm neutral on all this stuff.
Hmm.
But there are entities within the government now that I've begun to hear from people that because they've had the same energetic feeling inside themselves, never mind that they worked in government capacities, they have the same human curiosities that we're having now,
Hmm.
and no one's really answering them.
Right.
So I learned last summer that there were those from 3-letter agencies that were listening to podcasts with Dave Wallace and myself, and they're just kind of getting a bead on what our experiences were and how authentic we seem to be. Or these guys just telling a story, and no, 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 they got comfortable enough. Look, we know that after the last drone incident in New Jersey, they trotted out a bunch of people from government offices and from the Pentagon. And they told us the same stuff we've been hearing forever, that, oh, no, it's something else and it's nothing to be bothered by. But there are too many of us that know that that's not true,
Yeah.
have plenty of other evidence. So they know that they can't keep marching out somebody from the government when the time comes that they finally have to come clean. And
Yeah.
so they're going to find some people that do sound authentic and genuine. And those are going to be the faces you're going to see pushed out here very soon.
Yeah.
And don't be surprised if you see my face in it.
Well, yeah, I think, the military industrial complex has, taken, very high technology from some of these.
It, yes, but it's not
So,
government control. The way that I see it,
mhm,
there's been lots of contractors
mhm,
outside of the government that have been
right.
contracted to do that work for us. It's those entities
Yes.
that have this technology. It's those entities that had biomatter. Yes, there were bodies that were recovered, and we've had that stuff for a while now, and we're
Yeah.
beginning to see the evidence and the proof that that was really true.
Yeah. Yeah, all of this, yeah, is coming to a forefront for sure. And what do these higher dimensional beings feel about all this? Do they just, observe this from like you're kind of standing on your ladder, and so they see this larger perspective, and they're like, just let this play out, and
Yes,
we'll be here when you guys are ready, so to
that's as
speak.
close to the explanations that I can give you.
Yeah.
They're still hands off, but I can tell you this, there are some measures that they've put in place, and we've already seen evidence of it, that they're not going to allow greater destruction to the planet.
Hmm.
This whole nuclear arsenal that we put together, there was a video that we all got to see of a ballistic missile that had been launched that had a warhead attached to it. And during the launch, we could see clearly in this video a light source that had come out of nowhere and from 4 different spots around this shot a beam at it and disabled the warhead.
Hmm.
This is the evidence that I see, that this higher intelligence, the benevolent ones that are keeping us from destroying the planet, if we want to provoke war amongst ourselves, they can't really prevent that, but they're here to protect the planet.
Hmm.
And
Right.
they're going to do what they have to do to do that. I could go on about the other things that I think are problematic for them, but they really serve more about the Earth and all of this space junk that we've left in our ionosphere. Have any idea how much iron is out there floating around that
Right.
serves no purpose anymore? Look what we have done just to our own ionosphere.
Hmm.
And we think we want to go out into space further. Yeah,
Yeah.
I have opinions about that. First of all, human beings are not meant to be in space, are we? Now we
No.
can gear up and we can get out there, but even the equipment that gets us there is still subject to problems. We don't belong there. But our next incarnations, this next body, yeah,
Hmm.
we're designed to be star travelers. And the
Hmm.
craft that they use isn't propelled in the way that our stuff is
Right.
propelled, or they wouldn't go from here to here and then, like that.
Yeah.
They move in unpredictable ways that doesn't suggest that there's some kind of jet propulsion going out behind me. We don't really comprehend the way that it all works yet, but we're gonna figure it out soon.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's fascinating. It it's there's so many questions, so much information, and so much within the unseen realms, that we are, like you said, getting access to right now, and those of us that are like awake to it, and
Mhm.
connect with it all the time. Yeah, it's just so interesting. How do you think the Lemurians create the portals, and for them to be able to connect with their density, and like, how did you go into that portal? Did you physically go into the
Yeah.
portal, or was
Yes.
it were you in a meditative state and then your spirit went into the portal?
No, I was boots
Going
on the
back.
ground.
You were boots on the
Again,
ground. Okay.
yeah, it's a physical realm there.
Mhm.
But clearly my density had changed. Now, when you mentioned, and I want to revisit this, so I'm glad
Yeah.
that you said this.
Yeah.
I think over the period of time that I was there in Shasta, my vibration changed, Donnie.
Yeah.
And from the time I got there, which was elevated, by the time, and that was the last weekend I was there, and I ended up staying for 5 weeks. the, the next to the last weekend I was there was the day that this was all going to unfold.
Mhm.
I sensed that my vibration had been rising that whole 4 weeks I was here to elevate it to the level at which I could experience their realm. That's
Mhm.
how it happened.
Mhm. Interesting. Very interesting. So, who is the name of the being, the Lemurian that brought you in? What was his name?
He told me I could call him Alex. I don't know if he had
Alex.
another name. And it all kind of started from there because when he told me that, I said, well, that'll be easy to remember. That's my son's name. And he said, yeah, we know about your son. Follow me.
Mhm. Wow. Interesting. So, very, I mean, so are you an did you incarnate on this were you a Lemurian before and you incarnated on this planet?
That was one of my past
Okay.
lives. That's what
Yeah.
I've come to understand.
Yeah. So those of us potentially that are deeply connected to this mountain and that or do you think we're incarnations potentially from
Without question.
Lemuria?
Look,
Yeah.
I think anybody that
Mhm.
resonates with the
Yeah.
word Lemuria, when they hear it, there's a reason why it resonates because you were one of them.
Yeah.
Open up your mind, and I bet if you just let your feelers go out, that'll resonate with you, and you'll just be hungry for the next piece of information you can find.
Mhm.
You'll start to you'll start to do your due diligence, and anywhere you can find the word Lemurian, you want to know what it is.
Mhm.
I didn't appreciate it enough in that there were some other resources presented to me. Let's see. Um, my encounter in Shasta happened at the end of July in 2020, but by October, word kind of got out, and there was somebody in the Shasta area who had known about an individual named Sharula Dux that had allegedly been from Telos, came to the surface, spent some time here among us to educate us about the process and the oncoming shift based
Mhm.
on experiences that had happened before. When Rob Potter first told me about it, I found it online, and somebody had taken a 1993 presentation that she had done that Diane Robbins, who's written many books about the topics, had
Mhm.
recorded because they became friends. And that audio tape ended up being just short of 2 hours long.
Mm.
I found it on somebody's website that had posted it and broken it up 15 years before now and had cut it into 12 10-minute segments, thinking it was going to be more palatable on YouTube.
Mhm.
When I started to listen to it, I wasn't invested enough into the information and what I was being presented. Because, mind you, I'm like months into this journey about remembering who I was as a Lemurian. And I don't know, although I can appreciate who this might be, I didn't understand it.
Mhm.
About a year later, um, Diane Robbins and I, who became friends through this process,
Mhm.
had introduced somebody else who showed up at her door who claimed that she had some connections about a year later, and our dialogue began again. And that's when the whole Sharula thing came full circle.
Mhm.
I was interested in hearing about it now. And by this time, I had had this purge of AI images that when I started to play with it, just inner Earth images just started to
Mhm.
pour out. I'm no artist, but how the hell did all this stuff come out? And they all resonate with Inner Earth and
Mhm.
Telos and Lemurians and Atlantis. And
Mhm.
anyway, it just seemed like it was time for me to stitch those things together and see what 2 hours of this listen was like. So I had asked Diane permission to do that. She said, oh, I'd love to see it together again. And I started to take the audio and just play some of these images over the top. And 2 hours later, listening to Sharula Dux, a Lemurian princess, talk about life, culture in Telos, how we get around, what it was like to live there, is like a historical document in my mind. So I put it on my YouTube channel about a year ago
Mhm.
and just waited to see how people will respond to it. And those that were ready to hear Sharula's story, she had been here, I believe, on the planet and got here like in the late 1980s. spent time going across the country talking about the Lemurians and doing presentations. I believe that the last one that she did in this way was the one that Diane recorded for posterity. And then by either 2005 or 2007, there's no more signs of Sharula on the surface anymore. But during this 2-hour presentation, toward the end of it, she declares that on surface that our linear timeline, she would be 268 years old.
Interesting. I want to
Yes.
hear this. I want to hear
You
this.
know where to find it. It was
Yeah.
put there so that everybody could benefit from it and listen to it. And you might have to listen to it in phases. I did, to really appreciate what it was. But when we began to hear what Lemurian culture was like and what we expect to go back to, it made me even more thrilled than I was before when you started to hear it from a Lemurian's voice.
Yeah. Wow. Interesting. So it's her actual voice.
Yes.
Wow. So that will trigger too, because that's a
Yes.
vibrational imprint, you know?
It did for me.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, it's I don't know, it's exciting. I just love, these unseen realms that are becoming seen. You had mentioned that that you had a second experience on Mount Shasta with a hybrid this time.
Yes.
What do you mean by hybrid? Where is this hybrid?
Okay. All right. Let me back the truck up a little bit
Okay.
and kind of set the stage.
Okay.
This would have been a year later. So this all had taken place originally in July of 2020. I had a trip I was scheduled to take across country the end of July again the following year in 2021. And when I returned, I was going to go back to visit somebody I had met, a guy named Mickey Magic. And Mickey had come across my field because Andara crystals became something that I was supposed to be knowledgeable about. And when they were placed in my path, Mickey showed up as one of the original authentic sources for this type of material. I was due back at his place the first weekend in August, and I was going to spend the weekend there. I'd done some tech work in the past, had a small company for, I don't know, a 10-year period while I was in hospitality. And so I got pretty good at websites, and it was time for Mickey's site to be adapted so that it was easier for people to order Andaras from anywhere on the planet. When I got there on Friday afternoon, it was just afternoon, and there was a woman there. We'll call her Kumu. Um, it's not her name, but when I asked how I should refer to her in the future, she said, "You can call me Kumu." Well, her family and her genealogy is Hawaiian, and Kumu means teacher in Hawaiian. She's about my age, but I'll learn later that she's a hybrid. I can go into more detail on what that means because it wouldn't be that day these 2 days, this Saturday, Friday, and Saturday, when I interact with her is when I'll learn her story. It'll be about 10 days later when we're all going to be in Shasta again, not for the same purposes, but our visits are going to coincide. That's when we find the time for her to tell me who she was, what her background was, what she's doing here, and what our connection was all about. That would be just before, days before a conference I was going to participate in Shasta to share my story for the first time. The first day, she was there with a posse. She travels with an entourage. She's got some students, 2 or 3 at least, that travel with her and a sister along the way. And then there were a couple of other friends of hers that have been following her exploits, shall we say, because extraordinary things have been happening around her. And she's been able to capture a lot of this stuff with her freaking iPhone. around, and by the end of the day, and it wasn't just her posse, there was probably 12 or 14 of us there on Mickey's deck that day, all kind of getting acquainted, and I still didn't know who she was. Well, um, toward the end of the day, it was right about 5 o'clock. She went over, and you got to understand where you get from where the cars are. There's a little deck that kind of walks around the house out to the back deck. And she was over. I could see her out of the corner of my eye. She was taking pictures next to a plant in that kind of corner. I could see her. And when she saw me looking at her, she said, "Well, come on over here."
Mhm.
And she said, "I want you to put your arms around this plant, and I'm going to give," she gave me this Eliom to chant. And she said, just hold this position. Well, I started to chant this thing for about a minute until I felt silly doing it. And
Mhm.
then I just stopped and I turned around. And well, by then she was done with whatever she was doing,
Mhm.
because we moved into the house out of the sunlight, and she started to show me on her phone the pictures that she'd just taken.
Hmm.
And so the first ones of this plant were, there were light beings that she had
Hmm.
asked to show up. And then the last two were pictures of them interacting with me. The first one was going in my third eye and like out the back. And
Wow.
then the last one was like, I know where my downloads come from now, because the next one clearly had like this light beam, like a cluster of light beams
Mhm.
pointed at the back of my neck. And it's the place where when I get downloads now,
Mhm.
it's what activates. It's
Hmm.
the craziest thing, but here's the evidence from it.
Mhm.
And then she left.
Hmm.
Now, I didn't know what any of this meant. So the next day, um, Mickey's girlfriend Kim and I are getting ready to start to work on the website, and it's about mid-morning. Well, the phone rings, and it's Kumu. Kumu's going to come back. We don't know why, but she'll be here a little afternoon. So when she got back, she had brought Chinese takeout for like a couple dozen people. And it was only her and one of her students was there assisting her that day. But she'd also brought 3 or 4 protective cases that we'll find are holding artifacts inside them.
Hmm.
During the course of our exchange, she's going to pull these artifacts out and show them to us. And not just show them to us, 3 of these are ceremonial pipes,
Hmm.
and we're going to use them. They were, when I asked how old they were, she said she wasn't quite sure. She had 3. Um, they didn't all come from the same places. She was given the coordinates on where to find these and sent people out on her behalf saying that you might find some other artifacts while you're there. Do what you want with those, but these, I need you to bring these back to me. And so there were 5 or 6 things that she showed us that just were amazing. Now, first things first, rarely does anybody get to see any of this.
Mhm.
Rarely does anybody get to photograph it the way I did. And rarely does anybody get to use any of it, which we were also going to do, because Mickey and I were going to be invited to use these ceremonial pipes with some buds
Mhm.
that she brought from her family's plantation, who has these generational cannabis buds that look gold. Oh my God, I'd certainly been around that type of plant
Mhm.
medicine before, but this was extraordinary. Anyway, um, when we were finished getting acquainted and she showed us all this, Mickey's property is on a hill, and the house is on this level, and below another level, it's kind of flattened out where he has a huge Andara spiral. And in
Hmm.
the middle of it is a huge anchor spiral, or a stone that he got from Lady Nellie's and her property. When she passed, she gifted it to Mickey. But next to it, there was also this like 4 foot high white angel. Well, Kumu at the end of the day asked Mickey and I if we would go stand next to the angel, and she's standing at the end of the Andara spiral. She's going to take a succession of pictures of what's going on. First pictures where we were kind of sitting on the side. There's a like a bench over on the side, where Mickey and I were sitting waiting for her instructions, and she took some multi-dimensional pictures
Hmm.
that showed us some interesting things. It looked like in one of the scenes I was holding something. I was holding nothing. And the closer it got, the more it looked like, I thought at first it was like a baby dinosaur. And
Mhm.
someone whispered, "It's a serpent." No, that's Shiva rising to protect you. Now, I didn't know what any of this meant. Then
Mhm.
we got into the middle of the circle, and she called these light beings in again and took the photographs of that phenomenon with Mickey and I in the middle of it. And
Wow.
then she left again. Now, what does any of this mean? I don't know. Before she left is the time that we had discussed between the two of us that she knew I was going to be in Shasta in a few weeks, and she was also going to be there like the week before. So let's see if we can't find a day in between and we can get better acquainted. So the Thursday before the weekend, I'm supposed to present is the first day we have an opportunity to go to Panther Meadows. We're just going to find an empty campsite. We're going to take our chairs there. And for the next 45 minutes, she told me her story on how
Mm.
she got where she was. And so I don't want to tell somebody else's story, but I can tell you um, she, she's the result of a program that her father, who was a soldier in the early 50s, had volunteered to participate in a program to cross pollinate DNA, apparently. That they
Wow.
had some exotic material,
Mhm.
but they knew that these beings had some extraordinary abilities. And of course, from a military perspective, those scientists were interested in seeing how they might be able to leverage those abilities.
Mhm.
So her father was one of these guys that volunteered, and her mother would have no knowledge of any of it. It would be when I think Kumu said that she reached like 5 or 6, she started to exhibit some connections and some extraordinary abilities that nobody else has.
Mhm.
And she was put into a program to be observed for a while with other children with similar circumstances.
Mhm.
Now, she'll be the first one to tell you, I do not work for the government. I don't, but
Mhm.
there have been circumstances where they've come across phenomenon that they didn't understand and have asked her to weigh in.
Mhm.
Sometimes she could help them, sometimes she could not, but
Mhm.
she's separate, and her mission is here
Yeah.
to assist Gaia through this energetic change.
Yeah.
And she's starting to enlist those of us that vibrated at the same level is the only way I can understand why it happened to be me.
Mhm.
So that Thursday, um, was it Thursday? It was Thursday, because the next day she's going to invite me to a ceremony. There are 3 people that came from Miami, and they wanted to have a ceremony on the mountain. She's on some private property where the owner John has this energetic pyramid, and she
Mhm.
invites me to go along. I think I'm, like just like the fourth or fifth wheel, and I'm there as an observer. No, no, no.
Mhm.
The pyramid has 4 seats, and you are going to be the fourth seat. Before it begins, she hands me this Egyptian looking like icon
Mhm.
and says, "I just want you to focus on this while you're there." Well, that night, while I was in my meditative state, I went to Egypt and saw what I had done there, and saw myself lifting off the top of the Great Pyramid to expose the halls of Amenti, all the Akashic Records for all of humanity, because it's time now for all of you to have access to it. Now, where'd that come from?
Wow.
So when we got back to the place where these people were staying in Shasta on Friday, she was scheduled to leave the next morning. And we got back to their place around midnight. And she said, "There's one more ceremony I want you to participate in tomorrow. If you would, meet us here at noon and we'll all go out together." So I agreed to, and I followed them out. We went to this space kind of between here and Oregon. I think it's Highway 89. I could get the number wrong, but it's north of Weed and on the way to nothing out there.
Mhm.
Out in this space, there is a Veterans Memorial Park with a sculpture garden inside. She's been here before and done some ceremonies in the past, but here On a Saturday afternoon at 3 o'clock is where I'm going to have a different type of experience with light beings. And the interactions there for me are going to be very tangible and physical.
Mhm.
She picked one of these statuettes for me to sit under. And during this process, she took pictures. And before the process began, the last time she'd taken pictures of me, she'd used her iPhone and then emailed me the pictures later. She said, before we begin, I want you to give me your phone so that no one can ever say that these pictures were taken somewhere else, adapted, and then sent to you. They'll always be in your cloud as of right now. So you can look at the timestamps of any of these and they're legit. So she took pictures for the next 15 minutes of what was going on around me, of light beings in the area. And then toward the end of it, there was like this green thing in the scene over me. And when you started to look through each one of the frames, you could tell that was a ship that was spinning over me. So,
Mm.
yes, is this stuff legit? Yes. This was Saturday afternoon at 3 o'clock in the afternoon in a sunshiny sky. How does this happen here? Well,
Mhm.
those photographs were meant to inspire others that I wasn't going to be the only one. I'm the first one. So start to picture yourself in the picture interacting with these light beings because they're almost like passing light codes like a baton during that process.
Mhm.
I could feel and hear their presence when they were there, and it
Mhm.
felt like this energetic swoop that just went through me.
Do you think they're
I'm not the
plasma
only one.
beings? Do you think they're plasma beings?
You know, it's who's to say? We have to figure
Yeah.
out a way in 3D terms to kind of put that in. But
Right.
when you look at the pictures,
Yeah.
there's an argument to be made for that perspective
Mhm.
on it.
Mhm. Are those pictures online on your website or
Yes.
okay.
Yeah. If you go through, look through the galleries, you'll be able to see them. For a long time, I hid them because I really didn't. I wasn't ready for people to ask me what they were. But no,
Okay.
no, we're way past that now.
Yeah.
You're
Everything's
meant to see light being interactions, and this isn't going to be the last of it.
right. What happened to Kumo, right? Kumo?
Yes,
Where is she now?
couldn't
You
tell
don't
you.
know. So she has no presence online.
Nope, she prefers it that way. She's
Hold
not
on.
on social media, doesn't want to be, and doesn't want to be caught up in all of this stuff.
Sorry,
It
one second,
when,
Lou. I just need to charge my computer.
of
Sorry.
course,
I don't want it to die. I forgot to charge it. No. Here. Don't worry. I'll fix that on our
it's
editing.
all good.
Sorry. I'm like, my computer's gonna die. I don't want to get her full.
No, she still does lots of that kind of work all over the planet.
Okay.
Um,
But she's not present. And I mean, unless you cross her path.
correct. Yeah, and she
Hmm,
wants it that way.
interesting. Is she so she does she look Hawaiian?
Yes,
Hmm. Wow.
yes.
Fascinating.
Hmm.
She must return to Mount Shasta though, I'm sure.
Many times. I think her where she resides now is in the Bay Area, but
Mhm.
she's never there for very much. She
Right.
does go to Shasta quite often because there's a lot of ceremony and stuff that needs to happen there. And I
Right.
think that there's a part of her heart, just like ours. If you've ever been there, there's a
Yeah.
part of you that's been exchanged with the mountain that you'll never forget. And all you do is you just long to return.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's such a fascinating story. Are have you experienced anything else after all of I mean, I'm sure you've experienced a ton, but with the
Well,
light beams, have you been able to capture them on
oh
film?
yes,
Oh, wow.
yes. Um, Last year I was invited to go to Sedona for reasons that I didn't think were energetically um,
Mhm.
meant. But
Uh-huh.
when I got there, I found out why I was really being sent there. There was some alleged Lemurian energy in the area, in
Mhm.
a particular spot in the Sedona area that I went to validate. And oh, yes, it's not only there, it's there very profoundly. Um, the second week I was there, this property that I was there, and we're kind of helping to work out. There's not a lot I can say about it yet because this property is still kind of in flux. but energetically, there was absolutely something there. So this was a Sunday. There are 2 Airbnb parcels in this almost 3 acres. And I had agreed to improve some of the stuff. They had some plants that the proprietors wanted to put in. And so the rest of the work crews that were working on the houses were gone for the day. And I had the place to myself. So I thought, I'll begin to, put some of these plants in. It's a nice day. So I think I started just before noon. And the property next door to this is owned by somebody else, and there's a chain link fence that separates the property. The owners there have an older German Shepherd who I've come to know. He's called Scooby Doo. Responds to Scooby all the time, but he's older, and you can tell. I think he was a military dog, belonged to her husband over, but even when he barked, you could tell he was old because it was kind of. We had a bond. And so when he saw me, he came over toward the fence where I was starting to dig out a place to put this plant in. And he looked over in the direction of the house, which was kind of off behind me. Something got his attention. So I looked over there and I didn't see anything. And so I resumed what I was doing. Well, then I could see him sitting down on his haunches and looking in the same direction. And so when I turned around to see what he was looking at this time, I could see this light being who kind of, floated in from the house, kind of like this, over to the fence and kind of appeared right in front of Scooby until it like separated into 2 and dissipated. Yeah. Oh, they're here too.
Wow.
Yes.
Interesting. Yeah. It's just, I mean, they're all around us.
Yes.
Right.
Orbs in the area, filmed them there.
Wow.
There's an app on your phone that I had gotten a couple years ago to see if I could see it. It's called Ghost. Um, Hold on, I want to get this right. So if any of you are interested in it, I'll tell you what it is. Stand by. Ghost Tube.
Ghost tube.
And I've never really had any experience with it. It works with phones that are equipped with LiDAR technology. So I have a iPhone that's equipped to do that. There was one night when I went out and just opened the door on the Airbnb where I was staying in Cottonwood. And I could sense energies out there. I had already been outside kind of looking at the sky. So it was like right around 11 o'clock at night. And when I took my phone out, I pointed at a piece of this chain link fence where I thought I felt some energy, and I filmed it. Now, what I thought I was seeing was this LiDAR thing will show you like a stick figure, and it represents this entity that it's picked up in its light patterns and recorded it. So I recorded for like 30 seconds and went in to go take a look at it, imported it into my iPad so I could see it bigger. And I went, holy shit, there's something there. And so I went out again to record a little bit more, and I'll be darned if it wasn't still there. I think I recorded about a minute of it this time and went in, added to what I had. And oh, this is incredible. I'm going to go out again and see. So this last time, I think I tried to tack on another minute. And this time, it looked as though the entity was on the other side of this fence. And so I could walk around it. But as soon as I did, the security light came on and the show was over. So I went in to stitch this to it and added it to it. And I had almost 3 minutes of whatever this was. It looked like this entity was dancing right here at the fence.
Was
Now,
it bipedal?
I'm sorry?
Bipedal? Was it a
It
bipedal?
looked like it, but all you can see is the stick figure. I recorded it. It's in one of the shift watches, so you can go back and take a look at it. But
Okay.
here's how I put that in perspective. Are they there all the time? No, because I went out on consequent nights after that, assuming I could just go out there and record it anytime. They
No.
hadn't shown up after that ever.
Wow. So why do you think that is?
I asked for that kind of contact, and I got what I asked for.
So the thought, the power of
It's
thought.
all intent,
Yeah.
correct?
Fascinating. I mean, there's so much going on right now in our on our planet, and we are in. The Chinese New Year is the year of the wooden snake. What do you think this year is going to bring, 2025, from your intuition?
Energetically, I think sometime between now and the first part of 2026 is when um, this shift is going to take place.
Hmm.
It's been kind of described to me as we're evolving into light principle 40. And we're just about through with this process. It's not like Earth is going to it. Oh, we're almost into its completion. And because I understood it was going to be caused by some solar phenomenon,
Hmm.
some huge flare. I've been watching the sun for the last 2 years and monitoring every day. I look at what's going on. And I've gotten to the point where if you're empathic at all, you already feel this energy coming before you even see it on the screen. You just feel it and you know that it's coming. Well, we're in solar maximum, gang, and we're
Yeah.
going to be here to the first part of 2026. And if you've been watching the electromagnetic storms we've been suffering, and how our electromagnetic field clearly has been deteriorating because we're getting auroras to levels we shouldn't, given this little brush of electromagnet.
Yeah.
I think that it wasn't my conclusion. It's not going to be one big solar blast, although I can't rule that out. I think it's going to be a series of back in May and October, both. There was a week period where we had a series of 7 or 8, and in October,
Mhm.
there were 9, either the coronal hole that was heading our direction or little flares that came off. Those were succession and they were all earth facing.
Mhm.
My thinking is that this coronal hole that's constantly coming out of those dark patches on the sun, well, once it comes in earth's direction, there's an electromagnetic fusing that's taken place. So
Mhm.
there's energy coming our way, and it's shown
Right.
by the aurora. Here's the energy that's come, hit the pole, it's gone in, and now earth needs to express that like any other capacitor. Earthquakes, tsunamis, and all the things that seismically are created as a result of that thing we took.
Mhm.
I think that it's going to be during one of those periods where we've taken a coronal hole impression like that,
Mhm.
followed by the next little CME, and the
Mhm.
one that followed that, and the one that followed that, until finally it just cracks through, and
Mhm.
here we are. I think it's going to take place
Soon.
soon.
So what's interesting because it aligns with the indigenous peoples of the Kagaba Nation in Colombia, and they've been saying in 2026 the ending is falling into the beginning.
I had read this information I found about the golden tile allotments and how I understood this whole process in
Mhm.
the very first paragraph of this stuff that was written in the 90s and
Mhm.
archived away. It was a transmission from Toth on exactly what to expect, and here's how it's coming. The timeline suggested was between 2015 and 2025.
Mhm.
Now, it went on later in the article to say during this transmission that timelines are shifting all the time.
Yeah.
And it could be later than that, but it could also be sooner than that. And
Yeah.
so look at all the energy that we've been taking. Here's evidence of it taking place. So if you haven't been paying attention, maybe you might want to,
Yep.
because it's going to affect your vibration.
Yeah. Interesting. So you think the CME will create the pole shift?
Yes,
Yeah.
I
I
do.
mean, it has in the past, so
Yes,
why wouldn't it now?
yes. In the greater scheme of things, it's not the sun that's the culprit here. She's just modulating information that's coming from the central sun.
Mm.
We are in this band of elevated photon energy that we have not been into for a while. This whole age of Aquarius,
Yeah.
our whole solar system has moved into it, and the poor sun is left to modulate that
Mhm.
information that's coming her way, and it affects all of our solar system. not just Earth. We only see the effect it's having on us, but we don't see the big picture behind it.
Hmm. So when the pole shift occurs, I mean, does it go back to the regular, or I mean, when a pole shift happens, it's flipped for a
No
while.
way. Yes, it will flip, but there's no way of knowing exactly how that pans out yet.
Hmm.
Um, if we've watched where the magnetic poles have been moving, both the North Pole and the South Pole, we've seen they're not where they
Right.
should be. And
Hmm.
they continue to move. Well, the more that they move, you can tell that the earth is just being pulled in that direction. Doesn't it make sense now?
Hmm.
Oh, yes. It won't be very long before this finally just takes its last form and she flips into where she's just meant to be. She's
Wow.
in a cosmic cycle.
Yeah. And yeah, yeah, it's so fascinating. Well, it'll be interesting to, it's an interesting time to be alive.
Yes, it is.
It's an
We were
exciting.
here. We chose to be here during this transition, whether you really realize that or not. There's a
Yeah.
role you came to play and you volunteered for this. Look, not every soul gets to come to Earth to participate in these experiments. We were, and now we know our purpose.
Yeah. It's fascinating. Lowell, what message would you like to say to the world right now?
To
It's a big one.
get your vibration right
Mhm.
and uh, start to embrace the idea of multidimensionality because it's real. Dang, there are people that are talking about experiences, extraordinary things, and they're not coming up with some fantastic fantasy dream they've had. Let me put that in perspective first. Those of us that understand that we've had these, we can bilocate now, we can have out of body experiences. Our dreams are not dreams, they're experiences we're having. And so are the rest of you having dreams. You're walking down other timelines and experiencing things and coming back after that state and logging it away. More and more of us are remembering those things during that. I can't remember when I was a kid that I remembered so many of my dreams as I do these days. And I think that that sensation's going on with a lot of others, not just me.
Yeah, I say, since all time is now and everything is one and now, past, present, and future are all happening at the same time. I always say you're experiencing your other present self. And
Yes.
in the dream state, you are connecting because we're quantum entangled with our
Sure.
other selves. And it's proven in science. Metaphysics and science are coming together as one. And so, yeah, it's just, I really agree with you. Yes, raise your vibration, connect to the planet, connect to others, connect to your soul tribe. And so
Nothing
that,
else matters right now.
yeah,
Your vibration is going to dictate where you're going to go shortly.
yep,
That's why I say just focus on your own. Don't worry about anybody else.
yep,
I know that there are those of you that are going to have concerns about what's going to go on with your family. All I can tell you is that they're on their own journeys. They've set up their own lessons that they came here to learn to contribute back to source. If we are truly sparks of source, then we came to help it learn more about itself. We decided to come into a third dimensional situation with lessons that we signed up for. No one else signed up for these lessons. And when I go through them, I'm going to learn all the good things about it. And I'm also in this land of duality going to learn about the crap.
hmm,
So once we're finished with those things, though, just imagine that all of our experiences somehow get cast into the master Akashic Records, and all of the collective will benefit from it. So you're welcome for the crap I had to go through, and thank you for the stuff you're going through on
yeah.
my behalf.
Hmm. Yeah, I know that's very wise, and thank you for your advice to everyone. Well, where can we find you and your work? I mean, you're all over YouTube right now. All you need to do is Google Lowell Johnson and Mount Shasta, and poof, there he comes. But where?
I don't know how that happened. The easiest way to find my website, because it's a little cryptic, is just type lowelljohnson.info and
Okay,
it'll take you to my website. And from there, you can find my YouTube channel, and there's a lot of stuff there now.
Okay.
Really, I had no intention of doing this, Ani. I didn't want to be a talking head, and I said that. But the universe had other ideas for me, and the
Mhm,
people that I've crossed paths with have been extraordinary too. They're all tribe
mhm.
showing up
Yep,
now. Um, and we're all trying to figure out what the next step is supposed to be for us.
yeah. Well, Lowell, I just want to thank you so much. Like your story is inspiring and it's exciting to hear, for all of us. And I just keep on doing the good work and thank you so much.
Thank you for inviting me. And no, I don't think this is the last time we're going to be
No,
together.
no, no. I was gonna say I think Lowell's coming back on. So hold on tight, everyone. But yeah,
Yes.
but thank you, Lowell.
Thank you. Have a great day, honey.
You too.